Renault have just spent 6.6 billion francs on satisfying Eric here. Who is he? Well, he's about 30, he's married, he earns 30,000 a year, couple of kids, he's got a managerial position, and most important of all, he drives a company car. So why have Renault spent all this money on him? Well, they say he's the man who's going to buy their new car, the Laguna. What do you think of it, Eric? No, he's too young and inexperienced. I'll tell you about it. And if you think I'm being chauvinistic, well, it was Renault who said they were after Eric. They launched Laguna to the press in an exotic African safari location. But I can honestly say that didn't influence me, mainly because I wasn't there. We tested the car on the Isle of Wight. So what is the Laguna? Well, it's a car Renault say can trace its ancestry back to the trend-setting Renault 16 some 30 years ago. It's a 5-door hatchback that's supposed to look like a booted saloon. They claim the lines are powerful and distinctive. Apart from the curled lip nose, I think it looks much like any other Euro saloon. Inside, it's the same sort of story. Renault claim the interior fabric is based on the work of famous artists like Claude Monet, Paul Klee and Sol Levitt. But to me, it looks like bland Euro saloon. Now, you may have thought in the past that some of the Renault interiors were pretty tacky, but at least they were individualistic. Renault say they paid particular attention to interior space, and indeed, they say they lead the class in terms of elbow room, front and rear. There's an exceptionally wide range of adjustment for the top seatbelt mounting, but one thing that does infuriate me is this stiff, tiny little knob for controlling the back recline. The dashboard is pretty conventional, but while the radio is located here in the central console, the good news is you don't have to look down and fiddle with it when you're driving along. Like previous Renaults, all the controls are up here on the steering column for station change and volume control. And that's something I think every manufacturer ought to have. There's a range of 3 petrol engines and a diesel. Now, this is the 1.8 derived from the Renault 19. It develops 95 brake horsepower, but more important, it has what they call a flat torque curve. That means the engine delivers its power across a wide rev range, and you don't have to spend your life changing gear to make progress. One of the most noticeable aspects of the design is this very steeply raked windscreen. The only trouble is the first few times I got out, I did not bang my head. Renault say the car is aimed fairly and squarely at the fleet sector, and 75% of purchasers will be conquest sales. That's to say, people will choose to give up their existing company car and drive a Laguna. But only 5% of them will choose this, the V6. It's the same engine that's in Laguna's big sister, the Safran, and it follows the current trend in the medium sector for really quick cars, like the V6 Cavalier, the Saab 900 and the Mondeo, for example. But power and performance isn't much good if the chassis can't cope, and the Lagunas all enjoy excellent road manners, good ride, powerful brakes, with anti-lock standard on this model and optional across the range. You also get the obligatory rear deck spoiler that I suspect does little for downforce, but succeeds in seriously obstructing the view out of the back window when you're parking or reversing. As you'd expect in a car costing £18,500, it's got all the toys. In fact, the centre console looks like something out of a Concorde flight simulator. We did a count and discovered no less than 69 separate buttons when you include the radio, the air conditioning and the seat controls. It's trimmed in leather. Presumably this is Claude Monet's grey period. Noise levels in the cabin are commendably low thanks to the slippery shape and the extensive use of sophisticated soundproofing techniques. All the cars share a feeling of being well built, more solid and substantial than the rather tinny, fragile feel of previous models. Make no mistake, the Laguna is a very nice car, but I'm not sure it's dramatically different enough to entice 15,000 Erics out of their existing company cars. But then, I'm not an Eric.